Okay, Vosai, good evening. Hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be learning Maseches Shavuos Daf Lamed Hey. As you can see from the size of the blot, it's no small blot. We will learn this whole blot, but we're not going to be learning a blot and a half. And as we always end up doing at some point, we catch up. So we're at a new Mishnah now.
2 years.
What? David, you're going to catch up. You're gonna catch up. No. You're good. So it says the Gemara in a new Mishnah on the top of Lamed Hey Amud Aleph as follows. Let's say that the Toveya, the person who wants to collect money, he says to the Eidim, but this is a unique claim, so you got to pay attention here. Mashbi ani aleichem im lo savou v'saiduni. I want you, Reuven and Shimon, to come give testimony. Shamar ish ploni litin li mosayim zuz v'lo nasan. I want you to give testimony that Chaim promised to give me 200 zuz and he didn't give it to me. Not 200 zuz that he owed me. He just said he would give me 200 zuz. So I want you, Reuven and Shimon, to give testimony that Chaim said he was willing to give me $200 out of the blue. And then the Eidim lie. So Hare Elu Pturim. Why? She'ein chayav and ela al tvias maman kipi kadam. That when we talk about Shuas HaEdus, the only time it's usher, the only time you trigger the isser is when it's like you're recollecting a pikadon. The pikadon is yours, you're recollecting it, and then the Eidim lie about the Edus, that's Shuas Edus. But over here, if a guy makes a promise that let's say someone makes a tzedakah promise, I promise I'm going to give you $10,000, right? So then if they don't, that's not Shuas Edus. If the Eidim say, I heard him say I'll give $10,000, that's not Shuas. He's a liar, he's dishonest, yes. But the specific Isser Shuas Edus, it is not, because it's not Kipi Kadam. Second case of the Mishnah. Mashbi'a ani aleichem kshetedu li edus. I want to promise you in advance that kshetedu li edus, when you ever hear edus about me, shetavo v'ta'iduni harei l'pturim. Why? Mipnei shekadma shvua le'edus. You made a preemptive shvua, and that does not work for shvua ha'edus. Could be that there's an element of truth in the shvua, but it's not shvua ha'edus. We always have to remember what we're talking about. Is that we're trying to figure out when Shuas HaEdus applies, and it doesn't apply here. Third, Amar beveis hakneses. A man stands up in shul, be'amar, and he says, Mashbi ani aleichem she'imatem yodim li edus shetavo v'ta'iduni. If any of you know testimony about me, any of you in shul, 100 guys in shul. So I'm standing in the bima, I clap on the bima. Mashbi ani aleichem, if anybody knows edus. And then one of you lies, and you really did know edus about me, maybe you should say Shuas HaEdus. No, Hare Elu Pturin, and we don't know why yet. Although the Gemara hints to it, Ad she yehe miskaven lahem, you can see in the parentheses that if you specify the Eidim, then maybe it's a little bit different. Okay, next case.
It doesn't even matter the topic. You can say something about me. I'm not establishing.
In this case, it could even be the prototype. It could be like the perfect case of Mark owes me money. I want you to give testimony about Mark, but I say it to a room of 100 people, and I'm not specific.
If any of them know that story, sure, they have an obligation to do that.
They have an obligation.
If he just says, okay, who has testimony about me without saying a story of it,
right.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just gonna
But in this case, let's just say the perfect case. I say to a room of 100 people, I'm making a shvua on every one of you in the room, that if you are a witness, that I want you to please come tell me about about Mark owing me money. And two guys lie, it's still not Shuas HaEdus, Hare Elu Pturim. Because again, it wasn't specified down, it wasn't drilled down, it was too broad. You spoke to the whole room, not to a specific person. End of the first long line, skip the parentheses. Amar l'shnayim, the Tovea says to two people, Mashbi'a ani aleichem ish ploni uploni. I want you to make a promise about Reuven and Shimon. She'imatem yodin li edus shetavo v'ta'iduni. That's one example. That's perfect, right? I want you, Reuven and Shimon, to give edus, please. Or shvua she, and they respond, shvua she'ein anu yodin l'cha edus. Classical setup for shvuas edus. Ve'hen yodin lo edus, so they lied. But it was aid mi pi aid. They weren't the direct edim. They heard from other edim. Or oshahaya echad men karav pasal harei l'pturim. So there, we keep on. I feel like we're kind of like taking this Rubik's Cube of Shuas HaEdus and turning it a little bit and asking about it, turning it a little bit and asking about it. So here we're saying everything was perfect except for one thing. It was aid me pi aid. So that doesn't work either. Or the other case where one of them was a karev or a pasul, also that doesn't work. And the last din of the Mishnah that we've seen numerous times prior in this Masechta, Shalach biyad avdo. Let's say the Toveya, let's say Stan owes me money. So I know Stan owes me money, but I'm trying to get Mark and David to be Edim, and I sent an Eved to go do the dirty work to get Mark and David to be Edim. So Shalach biyad avdo, Sha'amar lehen ha-nitba, or Stan, who owes the money, not I who am owed the money, but Stan who owes the money says, Mashbiani alechem shimatem yodem lo edu shetavo v'tayidu hare'elu p'tur mad she'ishmu me'pia tovea. This principle we saw already on the top of probably Lamed Beis and Beis, Lamed Aleph and Beis. We saw it in the other day. I can't remember what page it's on, but it's on the top of a different page. So there, the Gemara says that it has to be coming from the tovea. What needs to be the impetus for the edus is the tovea, that the man who is owed money is the one who says, can you please give edus? If then they lie, and if it's not aid me p aid, and all the other rules that we've learned, so then that would be the isser. Otherwise, it is not. So let's start picking apart our Mishnah. As you can see, there's another Mishnah in 20 lines, so it's a fairly short section of Gemara here. Tanu Rabbanan. Mashbi'ani alechem imlo savo v'saiduni. I want you, Adim, to please give edus for me. Sha'amar ish ploni litein li masayim zuz v'lo nasan. Mark said he's going to give me money. Not because he owes me money. He just said he's going to give me money. So the Gemara says, Yachal Yehu Chayavin. You might have thought that perhaps this person would be chayiv. Tamulomar secheta, secheta l'gzera shava. Ne'emar kan by Shavuos edu secheta. V'ne'emar lahalan by pikadon secheta. Ma lahalan by pikadon, it's betvias mamon v'yeshlo. Afkan betvias mamon v'yeshlo. There's a relationship between me and the person who holds my pikadon. The relationship is that you're holding my product. So that's what we need to have when we're giving our paradigm case of Shavuos Eidus. But if Mark just said, I'm going to give you money, but he doesn't owe me money, he just offers me money, so then he should pay me. But if Eidim lie about that, it's not Shavuos Eidus because it's not similar enough to Pikadon. Next case at the two dots, a third of the way down on Lamed Hamid Aleph. Mashbi ani alechem kshetedu li Eidus v'chulei, Tanu Rabbanan. The Gemara says, Mashbiani alechem kshetedu li Eidus shetava b'taiduni. So says the Gemara, Yachol yu chayavin. Talmulomer v'shama kol Allah v'hu aid o ra'a o yada. And this was the case in the Mishnah where it was Misha kadma Eidus l'shvua. But v'lo shekadma shvua le'edus. So where the edus took place before the shvua, so then you can have a case of shvuas edus. However, if I mashbiya you that in a future date, should you witness a scenario where somebody owes me money, that is backwards. That's where the shvua is before the edus. It was a preemptive shvua. And the preemptive shvua by the world of shvuas edus is not going to be chayev. Next two dots. Amar beveis hakneses v'amar mashbiani alechem. Amar Shmuel afilu edav beinehen. Even if specific witnesses were right next to him. Actually, according to some Gemaras, it says afilu edav bifneihem. Does anybody have that? You have beinehen? In the shiur I listened to this morning, it said bifneihen. I went back and listened a couple times. I'm just wondering if he read it wrong or if there's a... Yeah, they are different. Yeah. Yeah, it's I guess, whatever. Even if the witnesses were in that room. So let's say Reuven and Shimon are in Shul, and I call out from the bima, anyone who knows testimony about the money that Mark owes me, I am mashbiya you that you should come forward. So our Mishnah said that doesn't work. Pshita. No, so why doesn't that work? So it says the Gemara, Lo tzricha, the koi ilavahu, they were standing right next to him. Ma'u detema command amar lehu dami kamash malan. They were the two guys in spitting distance from me. So let's say you guys are all sitting in the back, but I had two Jews over here, and I look at Reuven and Shimon and I say, you guys in the room give testimony. So you could have argued that I was clearly directing toward two people. Okay, you're right, I'm in a larger room. Kamash malan. Says the Gemara, the fact that you're standing next to them doesn't help at all. It is not Kimando Amar Luhudami, and you would be putter in such a case. And Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brayso like this. Ra'asiyah shel b'nei Adam. If you see a gathering of a lot of people, Omdin, they're all standing there, ve'edav b'neihen, and my Reuven and Shimon are within the crowd. Amar lahen, and the Tovea says, Mashbi'ani, Aleichem imatem yodem li edu shetavo v'ta'iduni, yachal yuchu chayavin, Talmud Lomar v'hu eid, v'harei lo yiched edab. You have to be miyached the edim. So if I'm in a large room, I am miyached the edim. This may be one of the sources. I believe the Ritva quotes this in Kiddushin. I think the Ritva quotes it somewhere that at a wedding, sometimes you'll hear the Masader Kiddushin say, these are the Edim to the exclusion of all others. He's being miyached the Edim. So too over here. By the Shavuos HaEdus, when you're in a large room, you have to be miyached the Edim to create that prototype of Shavuos HaEdus to the point that you would be chayiv. Yachal afilu amar kol ha'omdin kan. Says the Gemara, what if you say Kol ha'omdin kan, all of you, that maybe here they couldn't be chayiv? No, but if you're mechayiv the whole room, Talmud Lomar b'hu eid v'harei yiched edab. If I'm miyached all 100 people in the room, I don't say a general language of I mashbia all of you. I say I mashbia each of you. So then each person in the room becomes an eid. Can't do that at a wedding because there's krovim and psulim at a wedding. You can't do that. So then your eidim become mishkababbled altogether. So here the Gemara seems to say that you're allowed to do that in a case of Shavuos HaEdus, that you can be miyached the whole room by saying not just broadly all of you, but each of you. Halfway down at the two dots, Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. Omar l'shnayim mashbi'ani aleichem. If a man says, if the Tovea says to two people that I want you to make a promise, please. So there in our Mishnah said that if it was aid mi pi aid, then it doesn't work. Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis have taught us in a brisa. Omar l'shnayim. If I the Tovea say to Reuven and Shimon, mashbi'ani aleichem ploni uploni imatem yodem li edu shetavo v'teiduni v'hein yodin lo edus. But it's aid mi pi aid, o shahaya echad man karvo pasal. Yachal, perhaps you might have thought shehu chayavin. Yachal yu chayavin, that you'd be chayiv for Shavuos HaEdus in this case. Talmud Lomar, no. In lo yagid v'nasa avono. Only biru'uyin lehagada akasav medaber. You can't be chayiv on Shavuos HaEdus if you're an ineligible aid. So if you're a karv or a pasal, you might be a liar. You might have problems, and you might need to say Ataras Nedarim. There might be a lot of problems, but not Shavuos HaEdus, because Shavuos HaEdus is only in a case beru'uyan lahagada hakasav medaber. It only applies where a person heard the Edus properly. Aid mi pi aid means you're not a regular aid. Hearing Edus when you're a karav or a puzzle to the Tovea, 0. It's a 0. You're still a liar, but you're not going to be chayiv in Shavuos HaEdus. You'll be chayiv in other things. And the last din of the Mishnah, 2/3 of the way down on Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, Shalach biad avdo tanu rabbanan. Shalach biad avdo. If the Tovea sends his eved to Reuven and Shimon, she'amar lahen hanitba, or not the man who is owed money, but the man who owes money, the defendant, as we refer to him. If the defendant, the guy who owes money, says, Mashbi'ani alechem shimatem yodim lo edus, I want you to give testimony for the Tovea, that shatavo v'teidu yachol yuchayav and Talmud Lomar im lo yagid v'nasa avono. My Talmud, what's the drasha? Look at this. Amr Belazar, im lo yagid, spelled lamed vav aleph. Im lo yagid ksiv. Im lo, if to him the Tovea, and lo yagid, if the Tovea claims he's the lo with the vav, and the Eidim are lo yagid, then v'nasa avono. However, v'im le'acher, if the nitba was the one who created this moment by going over to the Eidim, then lo yagid, then if then the Eidim don't talk, then pater. Brilliant drush on the pasuk. Again, we never would have read the pasuk that way, right? But that's why we have Chazal. We're blind without Chazal. I went into this house a couple of years ago. This guy, he was trying to evangelize me. Oh, we had such a good time. He was reading psukim like just whatever hit him. Like that's how whatever hit him. That's not how we would be blind without Rabbi Shmuel and the Yud Gimel Midos Shator and Drash. We wouldn't know how to answer up anything in Chumash. Nothing. There's no way to understand Chumash without Chazal. We think we understand. That's why there's a running machlokas throughout the Rishonim between Rashi and the Ibn Ezra. The Rashi writes somewhere that he always gives pshat on the pasuk. The Ibn Ezra says, "Ein echad minei elef of Rashi pshat on the pasuk." They're all midrashim. They're all chazals. It's not The Ibn Ezra was a stickler. What do the words mean in Chumash? So we don't always paskin like that because Ibn Ezra was learning with almost like an exegetical, analytical brain. It's a very different mahalach in the Rishonim. Okay, but basically we can't understand Chazal without, and this pasuk basically indicates exactly like we saw that if the
I Googled it and it doesn't.
what do you sorry. Someone should fire me.
You don't talk that way.
No, they certainly make fun of me when I say words like that, though. Just went back to my biblical criticism class in YU.
I heard him say he got euthanized. That's where I lost him.
I never said that word. Evangelized? That's not a big word. That one.
That's where you lost me.
They're called evangelists. It's not. David, I think we're fine. Me and you are fine, right? That's not fine. Biblical exegesis. It's how we analyze psukim.
No, let's just go like that.
What?
Just like a deep.
I know. Yeah, I'm just going to stop it.
Use the word again. That's going to make it better.
Yeah. Try to define a word with the word itself in the definition. Take care, Stan. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Yeah, Brandis is enjoying the show over here. He's watching. He's not snoring. Brandis never falls asleep in Daf. All right, new Mishnah, 3/4 of the way down. What if he says mashbia ani alechem or mitzave ani alechem? Wow. Wow. What about mitzave ani alechem, which is a little bit of a different language? We've been talking b'lashon shvua. Now we're talking b'lashon mitzvah or osarchem ani, or I'm restricting you. Hare elu chayovin. These are languages that are similar enough to the language of shvua that would be mechayev a shvua sa'edus. However, if a person said bashamayim uva'aretz, if that was the language that they used, so then that doesn't work. But bashamayim uva'aretz is different. Hare elu p'turim. Meaning, if you say by heaven or by earth, you're going to make a shavua, you're pater. What about Shemos of Hashem be'alef dalis? What about the name of Adnos or be'yud hey, that with Hashem's name of Yud and Hey? B'shakai, b'tzvakos, b'chanun, v'rachum, be'erech hapayim, b'rav chesed, u'v'chol ha'kinuyim, hare elu chayavim. All of these languages are strong enough that a person would be chayiv the shvua sa'edus if they made the shvua b'shem Hashem. Says the Gemara, last of the middle width line, so mekalel bekulan, anyone who's mekalel with any of these words, so the halacha is chayiv, divrei Reb Meir. So what does this mean? A person, Rachmana litzlan, is being mevarach es Hashem. A person curses Hashem and they use one of these names as part of the curse. So these names are really, they're kinuyim. They're really not all direct names. But either way, you're chayiv. V'chacham and potrim. Hamakalal avi v'imo, if a person curses their parent with one of these shemos, b'chulan chayav, divrei Reb Meir, v'chacham and potrim, that no, it's not enough. Hamakalel atzmo v'chavero b'chulan over below saseh. But if a person were to use one of these words to be makalel himself or to be makalel his friends, the Gemara will speak about this. So then he would be over a lo saseh. Remember, we're not talking now about a shvuah. We're just talking about a person being makalel. So that's we're not talking about shvuah se'edus right now. So the pasuk in the Tochacha says, if you look on the side here, it says, Yakecha Hashem b'shachefes uv'kadachas uv'dalekes uv'charchur v'chulei. All the terrible things of the Tochacha. So Yakecha Hashem should destroy you. Skip the next word. If you hear that in laning and you lean over to your friend and you say, V'chein Yakecha Elokim, first of all, you're not nice, right? You just extended a curse from the Torah to one of your friends. The Gemara says, Zuhi Allah haksuva b'Torah. This is a curse that is found in the Torah, so you're not a nice person. Let's go back to the land of Shvuah. Let's say if I say to you, I want you to make a Shvuah, and if you make it, then lo yakecha, I won't hit you or curse you, or vivarechecha, or I'll bless you, or v'yetiv lach, or I'll do good things for you. So says the Gemara, Rav Meir is mechayev, even if you say it in the positive language. I'm not saying if you don't, I will punish you. I'm saying if you do, I will appreciate you. Why does Rav Meir hold this way? Take a look at Rashi, 8 lines from the bottom. Dibra Maschel, Rav Meir Mechayev. Michlal lav ata shomea hein. We're just making an inference. If I'm coercing you to do this shvua for me by way of positive reinforcement, so then That means I won't bless you if you don't do what I want, and therefore, Rameir holds your chayav, chacham and potrim. So says the Gemara, Mashbi'ani aleichem, these weird languages of our Mishnah, Mashbi'ani aleichem, mitzvah aleichem, osarchem ani, says the Gemara, Maika Amar, Amar Rav Yehuda, v'hachi kamar. This is the way we should understand the beginning of our Mishnah. Mashbi'ani aleichem b'shvua ha'amur b'Torah. I'm making you promise with a shvua, or mitzvah ani aleichem, I'm commanding you b'tzava ha'amur b'Torah, with a commandment in the Torah that you have to give edus. Osarchem ani b'isra ha'amur b'Torah. I'm making sure that you give this shua. I'm answering you based on the Isser and Chumash. So Abaye says that doesn't work. Amar le Abaye, Elahadatani Ribchia kovalchem ani. I'm going to tie you down. So that language says the Gemara. If you look at Rashi kovalchem lashon asira bechevle barzel. We say this in Tehillim when we're on time to Psukei de Zimmer in the morning. So then the Gemara says Hare elu chayavim, but koval beoraisa miksiv. The first three examples that you said were all ha'amura b'Torah, mitzvah, shvua, mitzvah, and osarchem. All those are in the Torah. But kovalchem is also going to be considered chayav in the world of shvua se'edus, but it's not found in Chumash. So then you have to come up with a better answer. Sa'el Amar Abaye, 6 lines from the bottom, hachi kamar. Mashbi ani aleichem b'shvua. Mitzvah ani aleichem b'shvua. I'm commanding you with a mitzvah based on a shvua. And osarchem ani b'shvua. So too, kovalchem ani b'shvua. So therefore, we're not talking about the languages reflecting their own words, that mitzvah refers to the mitzvah of sharing edus, and then you're chayiv. Because there are things that are not on Chumash that will still make you chayiv, like kovalchem, like if I say that I'm going to tie you down until you tell me the truth. That brings us to the next 2 dots. Now we're going to discuss the Shemos of Hashem for a little bit, 5 lines from the bottom. Ba'alef dalis, b'yud hey, b'shakai, b'tzvakos, b'chanun, v'rachman, v'erach apayim, v'rav chesed. L'meimra, what seems from our Mishnah is that Techanun v'rachum are Shemos ninhu, which is really odd. We use those words Hashem Yirachim all the time, or we have a lot of references when we say this. It doesn't always mean it's a Shem Hashem. Not only that, or minu, we have a problem from another brisa, and that is in regards to the Isser of erasing Hashem's name. Let's see which names you're allowed to erase. Yesh Shemos she'nimchakin, v'yesh Shemos she'ein nimchakin. There are some Shemos of Hashem that you're allowed to erase, and some names you're not allowed to erase. Elohein Shemos she'ein nimchakin. These are the names you're not allowed to erase. Kigon Aleph Lamed, Elokecha, Elokim, Elokechem, Ekye, Asher Ekye, Aleph Dalis, that's the name of Adnus, V'yud Hey, Shakai Tzvakos, Hare Elu, Ein Nimchakim. It's interesting, Ekye, Asher Ekye, the only time we really say this is in Hineni, and my Rebbe told me that Rav Moshe Shapira Zechron Tzadik Livracha, when he would daven, when he would say Hineni, he would skip these words, which was like pretty next level. We don't have Hashem's name. We have Yud Kei Vav Kei. Hashem, Kel Rachum V'chanun, ironically, same words that we're discussing now. But when it came to Eki Asher Eki, he wouldn't say them, which is interesting.
Next year you should skip it.
What?
Next year you should skip it. This year.
By the way, the Sfardim don't even say Hineni. They don't say Hineni, and they don't say Unasana Tokev. Our highlights of Musaf, no piyutim. They're done. They don't say. I know you're going to daven there this year. It's going to be amazing.
No, I come here for you.
So that name is one of the Shemos of Hashem, even though in modern Hebrew, the word, when it's being used yet, that I will be, that's a normal Hebrew word, but in this context, it's Shemos of Hashem. So anyways, the Brisa says that with these words, then Hare Elu Ein Nimchaken. We should go back to our tattoos that we were discussing the other day. If somebody has Yud K, Vav K tattooed on their arm, now on the one hand, you shouldn't have done it, but now that you did it, you're not allowed to erase it. It's Yud K, Vav K, Yud K, Vav K. But then what do you do for the rest of your life? It's an Isser Doraisa seemingly to erase the name. What do you do? So you probably leave it, and every time you go to the bathroom, you'd have to cover it just to make it. What?
Sleeve.
Yeah, you put a sleeve on it or something.
Another tattoo over it.
That's the story. I don't think you can do that. I think that would be a very.
Maybe use it as part of your decoration.
I did a bris down in I can't even call it a bris. I did a circumcision in like southern Indiana, and when I walked in, the guy was wearing like a baseball cap with embroidered like 3D Yud K Vav K on his baseball hat. Would you buy that at Lids? Never seen anything like it.
Did you ask him for one?
Should have bought it off of him, honestly, is what I should have done. And buried it. I was less suave. This was like 15 years ago, 13 years ago. He's a guy d'oraisa. He's a guy's guy. Yeah, he was definitely serving other religions.
It was like a big brim.
Flat brim.
Baller.
It was a baller hat, minus the isser of yeah. You gotta go in the bathroom. They're like so from.
You'll see me at Shiur Shas with one.
Wow.
Full suit. Full suit.
That's amazing. Okay, so these are the shemos of Harelu ein nimchakin. Avon, 2 lines from the bottom. Look at this language. Hagadol, Hagibor, Vehanora, Ha'adir, Ve'chazak, Ve'amitz, He'azuz, and these are the 2 words we need. Chanun v'rachum and Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed, Harelu nimchakin. If a person is referring to a Kadosh Baruch Hu as we do, Akel, Hagadol, Hagibor, but let's say you're just writing over Shmona Esrei to get used to it. Just say, you can erase that. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. Some of the shilas that come up now are on the smart boards. So the smart boards, you taka write, it's ki'ilu you're writing, but there's no ink. But when you write, the shame shows up like right there, like on the screen. There's no actual ink. It's just pixels. But there was a ksiva that took place that generated the result. I can hear a lumdus in both ways that it's problematic. I have no idea. I don't want to be a posek. I want to be a big Am Haaretz and then call Rabbi Reese and Rabbi First when I get stuck in Rabbi Robinson.
Rabbi First speaking of this?
I heard. I think he's on. That was a whole weekend, no? Just for the women? Oh. Okay, so that's our stira. Is that in our Mishnah we listed Rachum v'Chanun as one of the names that if I make a shvua with that name, that it's mechayev someone shvua se'edus for lying. But over here in the Brisa by Mechikas Hashem seems to be that we're mochik, which means that it's not a Shem Hashem. Amar Abaye, Masnisen, our Mishnah is referring a little differently. When in our Mishnah we say Chanun v'Rachum, we're using it in a descriptive way, b'mi shehu Chanun. We're saying, when we say Chanun, I make a shvua b'shem mi shehu Chanun, right? So then you're going to be chayiv. Turning to the top of Lamed Hem and Beis, or b'mi shehu Rachum. Rashi, b'mishu chanun, v'lav de chanun shemhu, ela b'shem mishu chanun. It's not that chanun is a shem Hashem. You're right when it comes to mechika. If you write down chanun, you can erase it. It's not a shem Hashem. But in our Mishnah, we made the shvua b'shem mishu chanun. So the way it was utilized was in a godly way, in a God way. Therefore, we're going to be makbid. Amar le Rava, Ihachi, I don't understand. What did we say in our Mishnah? We said Rachum v'Chanun is going to be chayv, but if you said Bashamayim v'Aretz, so there we said no, there we said you're pater. But if it's true that the way we're using Chanun v'Rachum is to say b'mishu Chanun, I can say b'misha bara Shamayim v'Aretz. Why can't I use Shamayim v'Aretz as a descriptor the same way I use Rachum v'Chanun? Yet our Mishnah says you're pater. B'shamayim v'aretz nami. B'misha hashamayim v'aretz shelo ka'amar. I easily could describe it that way. Just a brilliant question. So the Gemara says, Achi hashta. Nice try. How can you compare the two? Hasam keivan deleka midi achrina deikri rachum v'chanun. There we have a difference between Rachum v'Chanun, deleka midi achrina. There is no other usage of the ikri Rachum v'Chanun. Vadai b'mishu Chanun, vadai b'mishu Rachum ka'amar. Nobody says Chanun means Hashem. The only way to use Rachum v'Chanun and mean Hashem is to say b'mishu Chanun as a descriptor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, by Rachum v'Chanun, if you're using them in this context, you're going to be chayiv on the Shavuot. Hacha by Shamayim v'Aretz, kevan de ika Shamayim v'Aretz. There is an entity called Shamayim and an entity called Aretz. Then by Shamayim v'Aretz kamar. Then you're not using it in that way. But taka, if you did, it should work. It seems to be that would be the implication from the Gemara. But people don't use Shamayim and Aretz that way, not as descriptors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tanu Rabbanon, Kasav Aleph Lamed Mei Elokim. Let's say that I'm writing, and I start writing the Aleph and Lamed, and I was about to write the word Elokim. I remember that I'm not allowed to write it, and then I stop. Or I write the Yud and Hey, May, Hashem, of the Yud K, and then Vav K. Hareza Eno Nimchak. What if I'm writing the name Eliyahu and I stop with Aleph? Mutter. Mutter. It's not the Aleph Lamed. It's when you're writing Aleph Lamed as part of Elokim or Elokeinu, and then you stop with Aleph Lamed, that then has to be buried. Not if you're writing Elokeinu with a kuf, like let's say we're writing in our notes, then that's mutter. Then you can be nimchak. Shin dalis mishakai. The shin and the dalid from shakai, if you're writing that. Aleph dalis me Hashem from the Aleph dalid nun and then yud word. Tzadi and beis from mitzvakos. Harezem nimchak. These are not shemos of Hashem, they can be erased. Rabbi Yossi Omer tzvakos kulo nimchak shelo nikra tzvakos ela al shem Yisrael. No. Tzvakos he holds is not a Shem Hashem, machlokes tanoim. We're pretty careful about that. We usually often say tzvakos with a kuf sound. Shneimar v'hot seisi es tzivosai es ami b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. Tzivosai, my legions. That's not a Shem Hashem. It's a reference to the people, the legions. Right? By the Chabadskers, it's tzvakos Hashem. Right? They have like the army of Hashem. So Amar Shmuel in halacha, Rabbi Yossi disagree. Tzvakos is Shem Hashem, and we should be careful to say it with that kuf sound, and we should be careful not to write it in that way. Tanu Rabbanan, kol tafel l'shem, anything that is a prefix or a suffix to a Shem of Hashem, be'mi lefana, be'mi la'achar of hareze nimchak. So that's allowed to be erased. Any prefix or suffix, lefana of ketzad, la Hashem, lamed, yud ke vav ke, la Hashem. So then you can erase the lamed. Lamed nimchak. So says the Gemara, Beis, Bahashem, Beis Yud Ke Vav Ke, Beis nimchak. Vahashem Vav nimchak. May Hashem. No, just the tafel, l'shem. Just. What? Where? Beis Yud Yud.
You said you could go.
It could be. We don't care.
I'm just curious if you.
Oh, no. It just says Beis Yud Yud. I made an assumption. I'm sure it is. Yeah, I think so. So then the Gemara says Vav nimchak, Vahashem. May Hashem mem nimchak. She Hashem shin nimchak. I think we get the point, yeah. But hold on, we're not done yet. Hey, Ha Hashem. So Ha Hashem is I don't even think we have that. Ha Hashem. Hala Hashem that we have.
Hashem, right.
But Hey Aleph Dalet and then Nun Yud.
No,
Ha Do and then yeah. Stan, we're not done yet. Ka Hashem Kaf Nimcha. You want to go through the whole ABCs?
But they're not going to. What are we?
I don't know. You're asking good. You're asking good. What? Maybe it's going through the examples that are in Tanakh.
This is just all the prefix letters.
But then you'd be a commentary.
It's just all the prefix letters.
Agencies?
You'd be exegesis.
Exorcist?
This is the game of telephone. He's going to come home with the word exorcism and say that that's what we discussed it. Except that he doesn't know what exorcism means.
Wait, we mean something different?
Oh, yes, you should be here tonight. You should be here. Bunch of jokes going on in here. Okay, 3 lines into the wide lines. What about la'achar of Ketzad? What about the suffix to Hashem's name? Elokeinu, nun vav nimchak. By the way, I wouldn't have thought. Okay. Elokehem, hey mem nimchak. Elokechem, chaf mem nimchak. But acherim omrim no, la'achar of einu nimchak shekvar kitchu Hashem. Yeah, but even but just the Havamim is like hard for me. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, you can erase the nun vav. It's just, I don't know. Amar Rav Huna halacha ke'acherim, we paskin that way. Avram.
The first is a Cheresh also.
What?
The first part's a Cheresh also because you feel it's like the Shem Hashem already it's latched to it.
Yep, they're all connected. It seems. The parentheses, a third of the way down. We'll be stopping about 8 lines or so from the bottom of the page, Mir Hashem, if we get there in the next 9 minutes. Avram Delatya, Lenavos, Begivos Binyamin, Shlomo Danielson. Kol Shemos Amurim Batorah, Be'avram Kodesh. Whenever there was a shame of Hashem that was used by Avram, it was always Kodesh. Chutz mizeh shehu chol, with the following exception. Shenemar, vayomer Hashem, it's the word of Adnus. Im no matzasi chen beinecha, al nasa avor me'al avdecha, right? He just had his bris and he wanted to keep the guests. Who was he talking to? So according to this approach, he was talking to the malachim, and he used the language of adnus for the angels, which is weird. But that's what the pasuk says. I can't even read it. Vayomer Hashem imna matzasi chen beinecha. But according to this version of the Gemara, that's not Hashem's name. That word was my master. But then I would have thought it would have been with a patach.
It is.
No. Not on the side of my, not on the side.
What's the statement? All the names stated in the Torah in connection with Abraham are divine.
It means every time he used the word of Adnus or Yud Kei Vav Kei, it was always referring to Hashem, with the exception of this pasuk of Aleph Dalet and then Nun Yud, which was referring to the angels when he was trying to bring them into his house. Exception. However, says the Gemara, a third of the way down, Chanina ben Achi, Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Lazar ben Azari, Mishum Rabbi Lazar, Hamodai Amru Af Zeh Kodesh. They learned the pasuk differently. Vayomer Hashem, you the Lord, Imno Matzasi Chen Beinecha. Don't let these people leave.
No, you don't.
You don't leave. Sorry. Right, Hashem, you don't leave. You wait for me. Correct. That's correct. The Gemara is going to call that out. Right, that's the next line. That Hashem, you don't leave. Al nas avor me'al avdecha. And Kaman azlah hada amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Gdola achnasas orchem yoser me'akbalas pnei shchina keman ke'oso zug. It was the two people of Chanina ben Achi Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Lazar ben Azari Mishum Rabbi Lazar Amodai who said that Av Zeh Kodesh, that the pasuk could have been read in two ways. Either Avram was talking to the angels, Al nasa avor me'al avdecha. And by the way,
wait for me here.
By the way, Alna Sa'avor is a singular. He was talking to three malachim. So there's actually a bit of a grammatical raya that he was talking to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, who is one entity. Alna Sa'avru.
Wait, so they're saying that the talking to the angel isn't divine. That's about Tanakama.
Tanakama said he was talking to angels.
This one is saying it was still
straight to Hashem. These two Amoraim were saying that he was talking. These two Tanaim, excuse me, were saying that it was to Hashem. So which was the Aleph Dalet and then Nun Yud? Was it talking to the angels, which would be difficult, or was he talking to Hashem and saying, "Please wait for me"? And that was Avram. Lot was the opposite. Kol Shemos Amurim Belot Chol. All of Lot's uses of Hashem's name were profane. They were regular. Chutz mizeh shu kodesh, with the exception of one. Shneimar v'yomer Lot alehem al na Hashem hinei no matzasi matza avdecha chen beinecha. Mi sheyesh biyado laham misulach yozeh kodesh baruch hu. So that pasuk is clear. They was talking to Hashem. Kol shemos amurim binevos kodesh, but b'micha were chol. So in these different historical times, Rashi says Benevos on the fifth line, Ksiv and Malachim Aleph, Berech Nevos Elokim, and Bemicha, that's in Sefer Shoftim, is the next Rashi there. So that was Chol. Rabbi Lazar Omer Benevos Kodesh. How do we know that in Nevos was Kodesh? Micha Yesh Mehen Chol v'Yesh Mehen Kodesh. Some were Chol and some were Kodesh. Okay. Then the Gemara goes back to Shemos of Hashem halfway down. Aleph Lamed is Chol. Yud Hey is Kodesh. That was by Micha. What's Chutz Mizeh? She'elef Lomad v'hu Kodesh. Chutz Mizeh, mi Aleph Lamed, thank you. Chutz Mizeh she'alef Lamed shu Kodesh. Kol Yomai Hayos Beis HaElokim B'Shilo. So there the Elokim was actual Kodesh. Kol Shemos Amur Begivas Ben Yamin, which was the story of the Pilegesh Begiva. Rabbi Lazar Omer Chol, Rabbi Yeshua Omer Kodesh. They said all the words that were found in that parsha in Shoftim were Chol, and Rabbi Yeshua says they were Kodesh. Amar lo Rabbi Lazar v'chi mavtiach ve'eno oseh. How can you say that? Because what was going on over there is that they consulted the Urim v'Tumim about going to battle against Shevet Binyamin, and most of Shevet Binyamin was decimated at that time for the crimes that they had done. The problem is that when they went to the Urim V'Tumim, they lost the first two wars and they only won the third. So the Gemara says, how can it be that they were promised a victory from the Urim V'Tumim, but they didn't get the victory? So says the Gemara, Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua, Mashiv Tiach Asa. That did exactly what happened. All they did was say, "Should we go to war?" They didn't ask if they were going to win. Lo bichnu. They didn't discern im lin soach o im lanetzach. They didn't actually do a good job of asking what they were doing. And ba'achrona shebichnu hiskimu al yada. And the last time, everyone did agree that they were going to win the war. Shneimar Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron Kohen omei lefonav b'yamim ahim lemor ha'osef od latzes l'chama in bnei Binyamin achi im echdal. Are we going to win or not? So there we have a machlokes tanaim as to whether some of it was kodesh or some of it was chol by Pilegesh Begiva. And next, kol shlomo. Every time it says shlomo ha'amur b'shir hashirim kodesh. It's unbelievable. Shir hashirim asher li shlomo.
Oh, but,
Yeah, there are.
yeah,
I think so. I hope so because it says shir hashirim asher li shlomo.
that, yes, but.
Shlomo was Hashem.
Yeah, there. I just can't think of the psukim, but yeah, there are some. So it says the Gemara, they're all considered kodesh. Shir lemi shehashalom shalom, a play on the word shalom, a play on the word shlomo. Shir lemi shehashalom shalom. Chutz mizeh, except for the following: Karmi shali lefanai ha'elef lecha shlomo ledidei. That's talking about Shlomo himself. Umasayim. Well, yeah, that's an example. Umasayim lanotarim es pirio, the 200 who were protecting the fruit. That's the rabbanon. Okay, that's the drasha. V'yesh omrim af ze chol. Even the following pasuk is going to be chol, meaning the previous one is chol. Karmi sheli lefanai elef l'cha shlomo is chol. And here as well, hinemi taso sheli shlomo shishim. Av ze v'lo miboy ha'ich. For sure, the pasuk of hinemi taso sheli shlomo is going to be chol. And it is also the case that the previous pasuk is most definitely karmi sheli lefanai lifnei ha'elef l'cha shlomo. We're going to have to stop here because it's 9:30 and I have to daven. So we'll pick up at Elam Yirtzeh Hashem on Shabbos. Wishing you all a beautiful night.